The envelope sat squarely on my doormat like a threat. I had not even brewed coffee before I read the figure, $247,000, and saw my name listed under amount due. The terror was not the money. It was the familiar sensation that this accident was actually a plan orchestrated by my parents. When my phone buzzed with a 4-word text from my father, I realized they were not just planting debt, they were planting a story. My name is Ren Alexander, and I am 31 years old. I have a credit score of 780, a job that requires a background check every 2 years, and a routine that I have polished into a shield. I wake up at 6, I run 4 miles, I shower, I brew coffee, I leave for work at 7:45. This is how I maintain control. This is how I ensure that the chaos of my upbringing does not bleed into the sanitized life I have built in this quiet, sterile apartment complex on the edge of the city. But that morning, the chaos didn't just bleed in, it was delivered. I stepped out of the shower, wrapping a towel around my hair, and walked into the living room. The morning light was gray and thin. Filtering through the blinds, I kept tilted at a precise 45-degree angle. I walked toward the front door to check the lock, a habit I had never quite shaken, and that was when I saw it. A white envelope lay on the floor. It was not where mail usually landed. When the mail carrier pushed letters through the slot, they scattered. They landed haphazardly, overlapping, messy. This envelope was different. It sat exactly in the center of the welcome mat. It was squared perfectly with the borders of the rug, aligned with an obsessive, geometric precision. It looked less like mail and more like a notification, a summons, or perhaps a threat. I stared at it for a long moment, water from my wet hair dripping cold onto my shoulder. The hallway outside was silent. I unlocked the door and pulled it open, scanning the corridor. Empty. The air smelled of stale carpet cleaner and old dust. Whoever had placed this here was long gone, but the placement itself screamed of intimacy. A stranger drops a letter, a person who knows you, who knows exactly how to get under your skin, places it like a centerpiece. I picked it up. The return address in the upper left corner was bold, black, and unmistakable. Department of the Treasury, Internal Revenue Service. My stomach turned over, a slow, heavy rotation that made me feel suddenly nauseous. I did not fear the IRS in the way a tax cheat fears the IRS. I feared them in the way a person who has spent a decade building a glass house fears a rock. I was meticulous. I filed my taxes the first week of February every single year. I kept receipts for everything, down to the $5 stapler I bought for my home office. I was boring. I was compliant. I tore the top of the envelope. The sound of the paper ripping seemed deafening in the quiet apartment. I unfolded the letter. It was a CP notice, the kind of computerized bureaucratic nightmare that ruins lives automatically. My eyes skipped the dense paragraphs of legal text and landed on the box on the top right. Amount due. I blinked, sure that I was misreading the comma placement. $247,318.42. I read it again. $247,000. The floor seemed to tilt. It was the physical sensation of missing the bottom step on a staircase. That jarring, spine-compressing jolt where your body braces for an impact that has already happened. My breath hitched in my throat, refusing to go down. I looked at the name above the address. Ren Alexander. Not a mistake. Not a neighbor's mail. Me. I walked backward until my legs hit the sofa, and I sat down hard. I stared at the paper. $247,000. That was not a missed payment. That was not a calculation error on a W-2 form. That was a house. That was a life. My eyes scanned down to the bolded text in the middle of the page. Failure to respond may result in a levy on your wages or bank accounts. We may seize your property. I did not think about my bank account. I did not think about my Honda Civic or my meager 401k. When I read the words, seize your property, I did not think of assets. I thought of peace. The IRS does not just take money. They take your bandwidth. They take your sleep. They take the quiet. Boring stability I had spent 10 years constructing brick by brick to keep the insanity of my parents at bay. My parents? The thought arrived unbidden, sharp and bitter. I looked at the envelope again. No postmark. I looked at the placement on the rug. Perfectly square. This was not a mistake. This was a delivery. I stood up, the towel slipping from my hair, and walked to the kitchen counter where my phone sat charging. My hands were shaking, a fine, high-frequency tremor that I hated. I took a deep breath, trying to force oxygen into my lungs, trying to summon the rational, cold compliance analyst I was at work. But I wasn't at work. I was the daughter of two people who viewed boundaries as challenges. I dialed my mother. It was 8:15 in the morning. She answered on the second ring, which meant she was holding the phone. She was waiting. "Ren?" Her voice was breathless, pitched high. "Honey, is everything okay?" The tone was perfect. It was too perfect. It was the voice of a woman who had rehearsed this opening line in the mirror while applying her morning moisturizer. "I got a letter." "Mom," I said. My voice sounded flat, foreign to my own ears. "A letter?" She paused, a beat too long. "From who?" "From the IRS?" "Oh my God," she gasped. The sound was wet and thick with theatrical panic. "The IRS? Ren, why would the IRS write to you? You're so careful." She emphasized the word careful with a slight edge, as if my stability was a personal insult to her lifestyle. "It says I owe $247,000, I said, watching my reflection in the dark window of the microwave. I looked pale, ghostly. 200,000? Her voice climbed an octave. "That's impossible. That's a mistake. You have to call them. You have to tell them it's wrong. Oh, Ren, I feel sick. I feel physically sick hearing this." It was a performance. I had seen her do this 1,000 times. I had seen her cry tears of genuine-looking devastation to get out of a speeding ticket. I had seen her hyperventilate to distract a landlord from the fact that the rent check was going to bounce. The panic was real, but the source was fake. She wasn't panicking because she was surprised. She was panicking because that was her role in the scene. "Let me talk to Dad," I said. "He's right here," she said, too quickly. "He's just finishing his coffee. We're just sitting here worrying about everything." There was a fumbling sound, the muffled scratch of a hand over the microphone, and then my father's voice came on the line. "Ren," he said. His voice was terrifyingly calm. It was the anchor to my mother's kite. This was their dynamic. She created the storm. He navigated the ship, usually steering it directly into an iceberg while claiming he had everything under control. "Dad," I said, "did you hear what I said to Mom?" "I heard," he said. His tone was smooth, reasonable. 247,000. That's a big number. Ren, it's a massive number. Dad, it's a ruinous number. "Listen to me," he said, his voice dropping into that soothing paternal register that used to make me feel safe when I was 6 and terrified me now that I was 31. "Don't panic. Panic leads to mistakes. This sounds like a classic case of identity theft." He said the words, identity theft, with a strange crispness, as if he were reading them off a cue card. He didn't ask if I had lost my wallet. He didn't ask if I had clicked on a phishing link. He just offered the solution immediately, neatly packaged. "Identity theft," I repeated. "It's rampant these days," he continued, gathering steam. "I saw a report on the news just last week. Hackers get your social security number. They file false returns. They take out loans. It happens to the best of people. It's not your fault. Ren, you're a victim here." The speed of his absolutions made my skin crawl. He was absolving me of a crime I hadn't even begun to investigate, which meant he knew exactly what the crime was. "It was on my doormat, Dad," I said quietly. "It wasn't in the mailbox. It was on the mat." Silence. For 3 seconds, the line was dead air. "The mailman probably dropped it," he said finally. "They're lazy. Look, that doesn't matter. What matters is fixing this. You need support. You shouldn't be alone right now. I'm fine, I said, gripping the edge of the granite counter until my knuckles turned white. You're not fine, my mother's voice chimed in from the background. You're in shock. I can hear it in your voice. Ren, come home. Just for tonight. Come home, and we'll sit down as a family. Dad can look at the papers. You know he's good with this stuff. We'll figure it out together. Come home. The trap. The words hung in the air, heavy and sweet, smelling of my mother's pot roast and my father's cigar smoke. Home was not a sanctuary. Home was the rewriting room. Home was where they took reality, put it in a blender with guilt and gaslighting, and poured out a version of events where they were the heroes and the rest of the world was out to get them. If I went there, if I sat at that oak dining table, the narrative would shift. By the time dessert was served, this debt would somehow be my fault, or the world's fault, and the only solution would be to sign something I shouldn't sign or agree to a lie I shouldn't tell. No, I said. Ren, my mother pleaded, don't be stubborn. This is a crisis. I'm not coming over, I said, my voice hardening. I have to work. I have to call the IRS myself. You don't know how to talk to them, my father said. The soothing tone evaporated, replaced by a sharp, cold edge. These agents are sharks. If you say the wrong thing, you'll admit liability. You need me to guide you. I handle compliance for a living. Dad, I know how to read a regulation. That's corporate, he snapped. This is personal tax law. It's different. Why are you being so defensive? We are trying to help you. Because this feels planned, I said. The words left my mouth before I could check them. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't the silence of confusion. It was the silence of a predator who realizes the prey has stopped running and started looking back. Planned? My father asked. His voice was very quiet. What are you implying? Ren? I'm saying the envelope was on my mat. I'm saying you're too calm. I'm saying this number feels like something you would know about. Don't. He cut me off. The word cracked like a whip. Don't you dare accuse anyone when you don't have the facts. You're upset. You're lashing out. But do not disrespect us with paranoia. Facts. He used the word like a weapon. Don't accuse anyone when you don't have the facts. It was a challenge. He knew I didn't have facts. I had intuition. I had patterns. I had a lifetime of scar tissue. But I didn't have proof. And in my father's court, if you didn't have proof, you were crazy. I need to go, I said. I have to get ready for work. Ren, my mother started. I'll call you later, I said, and I hung up. I stood in the kitchen, the silence of the apartment rushing back in to fill the space where their voices had been. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic, bird-like rhythm. I looked at the letter on the counter. My father was right about one thing. I needed facts. I went to the drawer where I kept my emergency supplies and pulled out my phone. I didn't just look at the letter. I turned on the camera. I photographed the envelope relative to the door, capturing the background to prove it was inside the building, on the mat. I photographed the lack of a postmark. I photographed the front page, the amount due, the threat of seizure. I felt a strange dissociation, as if I were stepping out of my own body. I was no longer the daughter. I was the analyst. This was not a tragedy. This was a data set. I needed to capture the metadata before it could be corrupted. I turned the page over. My hands were steadying now. The shock was receding, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. I began to read the smaller print, the codes and the reference numbers that most people gloss over. I forced myself to read every single line, and then I saw it. It was in the section detailing the reason for the notice. Usually, a tax bill comes because you underpaid or forgot a form, but the verbiage here was specific. It referenced a filing. Regarding your submission dated October 14th, submission. My breath caught. We have received your request for a change in accounting period and responsible party designation. I lowered the phone. The room felt suddenly very cold. This wasn't a passive debt. This wasn't identity theft in the way my father described it. Some hacker in a basement stealing a number to buy TVS, submission, request. Someone hadn't just stolen my identity. Someone had used it to ask for something. Someone had filled out paperwork, signed my name, and submitted a formal request to the federal government to take ownership of something. This letter wasn't asking me to pay a debt I had ignored. It was confirming a role I had never applied for. My father's voice echoed in my head. Don't accuse anyone when you don't have the facts. I looked at the date. October 14th, 3 months ago. I remembered October 14th. My parents had come over for dinner. My mother had brought a pecan pie. My father had asked to use my laptop to check a football score because his phone battery was dead. I had given him the password. I had been in the kitchen making coffee. I looked at the amount again. $247,000. The envelope on the mat wasn't a warning. It was the receipt. I picked up the letter, folded it carefully, and placed it back in the envelope. Then I walked to my bedroom closet and pulled out a lockbox. I didn't put the letter on my desk. I didn't leave it on the counter. I locked it away. I wasn't going to call them back. I wasn't going home. I was going to war. I did not sleep. Sleep is a surrender, and I could not afford to surrender. I sat at my kitchen table, the laptop screen casting a blue antiseptic glow over the darkness of the living room. It was 3 a.m. The city outside was quiet, the kind of heavy mechanical silence that settles over a metropolis before the dawn trucks begin their routes. My coffee had gone cold hours ago, a black and stagnant pool in a white ceramic mug, but I kept reaching for it, not to drink, but to ground myself. I am a compliance analyst for Redwood Harbor Risk Lab. My job is not to solve problems. My job is to identify where a system has failed to follow its own rules. I look for deviations. I look for the anomaly in the data set that suggests a breach in protocol. Usually, I do this for mid-sized financial institutions worried about federal audits. Tonight, I was doing it for my own life. I opened a fresh browser window. Incognito mode. It was a reflex. I did not want cookies tracking my panic. I navigated to the official IRS website. I did not search for help or what to do if my parents ruined me. I searched for procedure. I needed the mechanism, not the sympathy. I pulled a yellow legal pad from my work bag and uncapped a pen. I wrote the word strategy at the top of the page. Underneath, I began to list the requirements for an identity theft claim. Step 1. File Form 14,039, Identity Theft Affidavit. Step 2. Request a tax return transcript. Step 3. Request a tax account transcript. I circled the third item. Most people do not know the difference. The return transcript shows what was filed. The account transcript shows how the IRS processed it. The return transcript would show me the lie my parents told. The account transcript would show me how the government swallowed it. I needed both. I moved the cursor to the contact page. The standard advice is to call the toll-free number. I stared at the digits on the screen. 800, 829. No. I knew how call centers worked. I knew the scripts. I knew that the person on the other end of the line was likely a contractor reading from a decision tree, timed on how quickly they could terminate the call. If I called, I would be a voice in a queue. I would be a case number. I would be easily dismissed. I clicked on the tab for Local Taxpayer Assistance Center. I typed in my zip code. The map populated. There was an office downtown, in the federal building on 3rd Street. It required an appointment. I clicked through the scheduling tool. The earliest opening was 8:15 the next morning. It was perfect. It was the first slot of the day. The agents would be fresh. They would have their coffee. They would not yet be exhausted by 8 hours of screaming taxpayers. I booked it. Confirmation number 492 Alpha Bravo 7. I wrote the number down on the pad. Then I closed the laptop lid and walked to my bedroom. I did not lie down. I walked to my closet. If I was going to walk into a federal building and claim that $247,000 of debt was a fiction constructed by my own flesh and blood, I could not look like a victim. Victims are emotional. Victims are messy. Bureaucracies despise mess. They recoil from it. If I walked in there crying, hair unwashed, shaking with the injustice of it all, the agent would see instability. They would wonder if I was mentally unwell. They would wonder if I was trying to get out of a legitimate bill by feigning a breakdown. I needed to look like a solution. I pulled out a pair of charcoal gray slacks, sharp crease, professional, but not expensive, a white button-down shirt, ironed, a navy blue cardigan. I looked at my jewelry box. I usually wore a small gold chain my grandmother gave me. I picked it up, feeling the cool metal against my thumb, and then I put it back. No jewelry. Nothing that caught the light. Nothing that suggested I had money to spare. Nothing that suggested I had a personality. I would pull my hair back into a low, tight bun. I would wear my glasses instead of contacts. I would wear flat shoes. I was constructing a costume. I was dressing as the most boring, reliable narrator in the world. I needed the agent to look at me and think, this woman follows the rules. This woman does not have $200,000 in hidden payroll tax. I returned to the kitchen. The clock on the microwave read 4:12. I picked up my phone. It felt heavy, like a grenade with the pin pulled. I had ignored 3 more texts from my mother. They were just emojis. A crying face, a praying hand, a heart. They were bait. She was trying to initiate a connection so she could gauge my emotional state. If I replied, even with anger, she would know she had access. Silence was the only wall I had left. I connected the phone to my laptop with a cable. I created a new folder on my desktop. I named it Records, all caps. I transferred the photos of the envelope, the letter, and the doormat. I renamed the files. Evidence_notice_CP_date_time. I checked the metadata to ensure the GPS coordinates were embedded in the image files. They were proof of receipt, proof of location. Then I opened my email. I have had the same email address since college. It is the repository of my digital life. Every receipt, every password reset, every newsletter I never read lives there. I went to the search bar. I typed IRS. Nothing but newsletters from tax software I used years ago. I typed Department of Treasury. Nothing. I typed address change. The results populated. A long list of mundane notifications. Amazon, my bank, the utility company from when I moved 3 years ago. I scrolled down, and then I stopped. There was an email from 5 months ago. It was in the Promotions tab, the purgatory where Gmail sends things it thinks you do not need to see. The subject line was generic. Profile update confirmation. I had not opened it. I had assumed it was spam, or maybe a confirmation from a shopping site. I clicked it now. It was not from a shopping site. It was a notification from a secure document delivery service, the kind used by legal firms and, occasionally, government contractors. Your address has been successfully updated to 479 Oak Hollow Lane, my parents' address. I stared at the screen. The date was August 12th, 5 months ago. My heart hammered a slow, dull rhythm against my ribs. August. I thought back to August. What was I doing? I was working overtime on a project for a healthcare client. I was exhausted. I was barely looking at my personal email. I checked the sender, notifications at secure-doc-portal.com. It looked legitimate. It was legitimate. Someone had accessed a portal, likely a state-level business registration portal, and changed the contact information associated with my name. And because the system was automated, it sent a courtesy email to the address on file. My address. I had missed it. I felt a surge of self-loathing so sharp it made me wince. I was a compliance analyst. I was the person who caught these things for other people, and I had let a notification about my own legal identity rot in a spam folder because I was too busy working to protect a corporation. I took a screenshot of the email. I saved it to the records folder. Evidence_unauthorized_I. Address_change_us. August. I sat back, rubbing my temples. This meant the timeline was longer than I thought. The letter yesterday was the climax. The setup had started in the summer, maybe earlier. I picked up my phone again. I navigated to my banking app. It was 4:45 in the morning. I logged in. My checking account balance was normal, $4,200. My savings account was untouched. I called the number on the back of my debit card. "Customer service," the automated voice said. "Please enter your PIN." I entered it. "For security," the voice said, "please state your mother's maiden name." I froze. My mother's maiden name. It was the master key. It was the answer to the security question for my bank, my credit cards, my student loans, my medical portal. My mother knew her own maiden name. I waited for the representative. The hold music was a tinny, distorted jazz loop that grated on my nerves. "This is David. How can I help you?" "I need to change my security protocols," I said. My voice was raspy from disuse. I cleared my throat. "I believe my personal information has been compromised by a family member who has all of my static identifiers." "I'm sorry to hear that, ma'am," David said. He sounded tired. "Do you see any unauthorized transactions?" "No, not yet. But they have my social. They have my date of birth. And they obviously know the answers to my security questions because they are the answers." "I understand," he said. "We can add a verbal password. Something that isn't on file. A phrase only you would know." "Do it," I said. "The phrase is titanium." "Titanium," he repeated. "Okay, I've updated that. Anytime you call, or anyone calls claiming to be you, we will ask for that word, if they don't have it. We lock the account." "Good," I said. "Also, turn on two-factor authentication for every single login, and set it to an authenticator app. Not SMS. They might try to SIM swap my phone." "You know your stuff," David said, a hint of admiration in his voice. "I wish I didn't," I replied. I hung up. I felt a small, grim sense of satisfaction. It was one door locked, one window barred. But as I sat there, watching the first gray light of dawn creep across the floorboards, a memory surfaced. It pushed its way through the fatigue and the adrenaline. I was 22. I had just graduated from college. I was packing my car to move to the city, to start my first real job. I had a folder of documents, my birth certificate, my social security card, my passport. My father had come into my room. He had looked at the folder. "You don't want to take those with you." "Ren," he had said. He had been smiling, that warm, protective smile. "You're going to be living in an apartment complex. People break into apartments. Things get lost in moves. Let me keep the originals here, in the safe. I'll give you copies." It had made sense at the time. He was my father. He was the safety net. I had handed him the folder. I had handed him my identity, for safekeeping. He had said, I realize now, with a cold, crystallizing horror, that he hadn't been keeping them safe for me. He had been keeping them safe for himself. He was hoarding my identity like a resource, like a spare battery he could plug into when his own ran out. The accident of the debt wasn't an accident. Identity theft by a stranger is chaotic. It is a smash and grab. They max out your cards at an electronics store. They open a payday loan and run. They burn the house down and flee. This was not fire. This was architecture. The squared envelope, the polite text message, the change of address 5 months ago, the perfectly timed submission. My parents hadn't stolen my identity. They had occupied it. They had moved into my legal name like squatters moving into a vacant house, painting the walls, setting up furniture, and signing a lease, all while I was sleeping. I looked at the clock. 6 a.m. I stood up. I went to the coffee machine and poured the cold, black liquid down the sink. I brewed a fresh pot. I had 2 hours before my appointment. I had my folder. I had my outfit. I had my strategy. I walked to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were dark, rimmed with red, but my jaw was set. Identity theft is chaos, I whispered to the reflection. My parents are not chaos. They were a business, and I was about to audit them. The fluorescent lights in the federal building were not designed to illuminate. They were designed to expose. They hummed with a low, headache-inducing frequency that seemed to vibrate against the fillings in my teeth. I sat in a plastic chair bolted to the floor, my hands folded on top of my manila folder. I was acutely aware of the black dome camera mounted in the corner of the ceiling. It was pointed directly at the intake desks. I kept my breathing rhythmic. In for 4 counts. Hold for 4. Out for 4. It was a technique I used before presenting quarterly risk assessments to the board of directors. If I could keep my heart rate down, I could keep my voice steady. If my voice was steady, I was credible. "Number A42, a voice called out. I stood up. I smoothed the front of my charcoal slacks, picked up my bag, and walked to window 3. The woman behind the plexiglass partition did not look like a monster. She looked like a librarian who had seen too many people lie about overdue books. Her name tag read Ms. Halloway. She had short, graying hair and reading glasses suspended on a chain around her neck. She did not smile. She did not frown. She simply waited. "Good morning," I said. My voice was low, controlled. "I received a CP notice yesterday that I believe contains a significant error regarding my liability status. I did not say, 'It's not mine.' I did not say my parents did this. I used the language of the system. Liability status, Ms. Halloway held out a hand. ID and the notice. Please." I slid my driver's license and the folded letter through the slot at the bottom of the glass. She took them without looking at me. She typed something into her keyboard, a rapid staccato clatter that echoed in the small cubicle. She picked up a scanner, beeped the barcode on the notice, and then beeped my license. Then, she stopped. It was not a pause. It was a freeze. Her fingers hovered over the keys. Her eyes, which had been scanning the screen with practiced indifference, locked onto a specific line of text. She didn't blink. The silence stretched. It was a heavy, pressurized silence. In the cubicle next to us, a man was arguing about a payment plan for $2,000, but at window 3, the air had been sucked out of the room. I felt a line of cold sweat trace its way down my spine, beneath my starch-stiffened shirt. Ms. Halloway looked at the screen. Then she looked at my license. Then she looked at the screen again. Finally, she looked at me. The indifference was gone. In its place was a sharp, clinical scrutiny. She was no longer looking at a taxpayer. She was looking at a suspect. "Ms. Alexander," she said. Her voice had dropped in volume but increased in intensity. "Who submitted this filing?" The question threw me. I had expected her to ask about the money. I had expected her to ask for payment. Who submitted this? Implied an action. It implied that this debt wasn't just a static hole in the ground. It was a hole someone had actively dug. "I don't understand the question," I said, keeping my hands clasped so she wouldn't see the tremor in my fingers. "I didn't submit anything. That is why I'm here. I received this notice yesterday. I have never seen this amount before." Ms. Halloway stared at me for another long beat. She was assessing me. She was looking for the micro-expressions of a liar. The twitch of the eye, the dry mouth. I gave her nothing but flat, terrifying confusion. "This is not a personal income tax debt," she said slowly, enunciating every syllable. "This is not a 1040 issue. This is a trust fund recovery penalty." I frowned. "I don't have a trust fund." "That is not what that means," she said. She turned her monitor slightly, not enough for me to see the full screen, but enough to indicate she was reading from a specific file. "The trust fund recovery penalty is assessed when a business fails to pay its employment taxes, Social Security and Medicare withheld from employees' paychecks. When the business does not pay, the IRS looks for the responsible party to hold personally liable." She looked over the rim of her glasses. "You are listed as the responsible party." The floor didn't just tilt this time, it dissolved. "I don't own a business," I said. My voice sounded thin. "I am an employee. I work for a risk management firm. I have never owned a business in my life." "According to our records," Ms. Halloway said, her tone dry as dust, "you are not just the owner. You are the designated officer with authority to disperse funds." She hit a key on her keyboard. A printer behind her whirred to life. It churned out 3 pages of dense, black text. She grabbed them, stapled them with a violent thwack, and slid the packet under the glass. "This is the transcript of the assessment," she said. "Look at the entity name." I looked down at the paper. My vision blurred for a second, then sharpened. Entity name, Hollow-Pine Care Solutions, LLC. The air left my lungs in a rush. Hollow-Pine. It was the name of the home healthcare agency my parents had started 4 years ago. I remembered the dinner where they announced it. My father had raised a glass of cheap champagne. "To independence," he had said, "to building a legacy." My mother had talked about how they were finally going to be their own bosses, how they were going to help the elderly. They had even asked me to design the logo because "you're good with computers." I had declined. Citing work, I hadn't thought about Hollow-Pine in years. They never talked about the business details, only vague complaints about lazy employees and government red tape. "That is my parents' company," I whispered. "The IRS does not care about your parents." "Ms. Holloway said, "We care about the officers listed on the Articles of Organization and the EIN application. Look at the second line." I lowered my eyes further. "Officer. Ren Alexander. Title. Treasurer. Treasurer." The word sat there on the page. Absurd and terrifying. I was the treasurer. I, who had never seen a bank statement for this company. I, who had never signed a check. I, who lived 40 minutes away and hadn't been to their house in 3 months. "I never agreed to this," I said. I looked up at Ms. Holloway. "I never signed anything accepting this role. I didn't even know I was listed." "There was a Form 8822B filed," she said. "Change of address and responsible party. It was submitted digitally and followed up with a paper signature document." "Show me," I said. The demand came out sharper than I intended. "Please, show me the signature." Ms. Holloway hesitated. Then she typed a few more commands. "I can pull the digital image of the signature page filed with the amendment. It takes a moment to retrieve from the archive." We waited. The silence returned. But this time it wasn't empty. It was filled with the roar of my own blood in my ears. Treasurer. They had made me the treasurer. That was the person who handled the money. That was the person who went to jail when the money was missing. "Here," Ms. Holloway said. She turned the monitor fully toward me. On the screen was a scanned document. It was grainy, black and white. At the bottom was a signature line. Ren Alexander. I stared at it. It was my name. It was my handwriting. The loop of the W was distinct, a sharp, angular accent that I had developed in high school. The A in Alexander was detached from the L, just the way I wrote it, but it was wrong. It was too fast. The tail of the R trailed off in a jagged line, like the pen had been lifted too quickly. When I sign my name, I am deliberate. I ground the pen. This signature looked like someone trying to be me while looking over their shoulder. "That is a forgery," I said. "It matches the signature on your 1040 tax return from 2 years ago." "Ms. Holloway said calmly. "The system flagged it as a match." "Because they have my tax returns," I said. "My father kept my records. He has samples of my signature going back a decade. He practiced." Ms. Holloway did not look convinced. She looked bored. "Ms. Alexander, everyone says it is a forgery when the bill comes due, but there is more." She scrolled down the document on the screen. "When this form was filed," she said, pointing to a box on the right side of the digital form, "the mailing address for the responsible party, that is you, was updated." I looked at the address. 479 Oak Hollow Lane. "That is my parents' house," I said. "Exactly," Ms. Holloway said. "So, the notices for the unpaid payroll taxes, the warning letters, the intent to levy, the demands for payment, they have been going to that address for 6 months. Did you receive them?" "No," I said, "because I don't live there." "But you are listed as the treasurer at that address," she countered. "And then, 3 weeks ago, a new form was submitted changing the address to your current apartment. That is why you got the final notice yesterday. The logic clicked into place like the tumblers of a lock. My parents had run up the debt. They had stopped paying the payroll taxes for their employees, probably using the money to float their lifestyle or pay off other debts. The notices had started coming to their house. Addressed to me, they had opened them, they had hidden them, but the IRS is a machine that does not stop. Eventually, the machine threatens to seize assets. If the IRS seized assets at their house, my parents would lose their home. They would be exposed. So, they changed the address. They switched the address to my apartment right before the final blow landed. They moved the target. They wanted the IRS to come for my bank account, my wages, my life. They wanted the seizure to happen to me, thinking I would panic, pay it if I could, or, more likely, be forced to come to them for help, giving them total control over the narrative. That was why my mother wanted me to come home last night. If I had gone home, I would have brought the letter. My father would have taken it. Let me handle this. Ren, he would have said, and then he would have buried it, and I wouldn't have known I was dead until my paycheck was garnished to zero. They moved the debt, I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of rage and awe. They transferred the blast zone to my apartment. Miss Holloway pulled the monitor back. She looked at me, and for the first time, the skepticism in her eyes wavered. She saw the realization hitting me. She saw the horror. It wasn't the panic of a guilty person caught red-handed. It was the devastation of a person realizing they had been murdered by their own creators. If this is true, Ms. Holloway said, lowering her voice, if you are alleging that you were added as an officer without your consent and that the signature is forged, this is not just a tax issue. This is criminal fraud. I know what it is, I said. To contest this, she continued, you cannot just say it isn't you. You need to prove that you had no knowledge, no benefit, and no control. You need to prove you were not a responsible party in reality, regardless of what the paper says. She leaned forward. But be warned, Ms. Alexander, if you file an affidavit claiming forgery, we will open an investigation into the people who submitted the documents. If those people are your parents, they will be subject to federal prosecution. There is no middle ground. You cannot clear your name without implicating theirs. She was giving me an out. She was testing me. She was asking if I had the stomach to send my parents to prison to save myself. I looked at the 3 pages of the transcript. Hollow Pine Care Solutions. Treasurer. $247,000. I thought about the envelope on the mat, the perfect square. I thought about my father's voice. Don't accuse anyone when you don't have the facts. I want the forms, I said. I want the affidavit. I want the fraud packet. Ms. Holloway nodded slowly. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a thick stack of papers. She slid them under the glass. You have 30 days to respond to the levy notice, she said. But for the fraud claim, you should file yesterday. I took the papers. My hands were steady now. The coldness had spread all the way to my fingertips. Thank you, I said. I stood up. I didn't look back at the camera. I walked out of the cubicle farm, past the security guard, and into the lobby of the federal building. My phone buzzed in my bag, a single, short vibration. I stopped in the middle of the atrium, the high ceiling echoing with the footsteps of lawyers and bureaucrats. I pulled out my phone, a text message from Dad. I stared at the screen. 4 words. Don't make this worse. He knew. He knew I had an appointment. Maybe he had access to my email. Maybe he had called the house and I hadn't answered. So he assumed. Or maybe he just knew me. He knew I wouldn't just sit there. Don't make this worse. It wasn't a plea. It was a command. It meant, don't fight back. Take the fall. Be the good daughter. I looked at the message. And then I looked at the packet of fraud documents in my hand. He was worried about me making it worse. I unlocked my phone and took a screenshot of the text. Then I opened the records folder and saved it. Evidence_intimidation_text_. Dad_Jan_20_4th. I wasn't going to make it worse. I was going to make it accurate. Ms. Holloway did not hand me the fraud packet immediately. Her hand hovered over the stack of papers, her fingers resting on the top sheet as if she were weighing the decision to release a weapon. She was looking at her screen again, her eyes narrowing behind the rimless glasses. "Ms. Alexander," she said, her voice dropping to a register that barely carried over the hum of the ventilation system. "Before you file the affidavit claiming forgery, there is something else you need to see. The system shows that the change of responsible party was not the only document filed on October 14th. My stomach tightened. What else was filed? "A Form 2848, she said. "Power of attorney and declaration of representative." The air in the cubicle seemed to grow heavy, pressing against my eardrums. I knew what a power of attorney was. In my line of work, we dealt with them during corporate mergers. It was a document that handed over your voice. It authorized another person to receive confidential information, to negotiate, to sign agreements, and to bind you to decisions without your presence. If someone held a power of attorney over me, they did not just steal my money, they stole my right to object to the theft. "I never signed a power of attorney," I said. "I have never authorized anyone to speak to the IRS on my behalf." "It is in the file," Ms. Holloway said. "It grants full authority to an individual to handle all tax matters for the periods ending 2023 through 2025 for Hollow Pine Care Solutions, specifically regarding payroll liabilities assessed to you." "Who?" I asked. "Who is the representative?" Ms. Holloway turned the monitor. "Does the name Arthur Vane mean anything to you?" I stared at the name, Arthur Vane. It sounded slick, manufactured, and then a memory surfaced from a Sunday afternoon visit to my parents' house 6 months ago. I was in the kitchen, helping my mother dry dishes. On the counter, amidst a pile of unopened bills and catalogs, was a glossy postcard. It was red and yellow, aggressive, with bold block letters. "Oh, the IRS. We settle for pennies on the dollar. Call Vane Tax Resolution today." My father had walked in, seen me looking at it, and swept it into a drawer. "Just junk mail," he had said. "Scavengers." "He is a tax resolution consultant," I said. "The kind that advertises on late-night television. I saw his flyer at my parents' house." "He is listed here as your representative," Ms. Holloway said, "which means when we sent the notices, and when we tried to call to discuss the debt, we were likely directed to him, or he was intercepting the communication." "Look at the contact information," I said, pointing at the screen. "Look at the phone number listed for the taxpayer, not for Vane, for me." Ms. Holloway scrolled down. Taxpayer contact 5550198. I let out a short, sharp breath that was almost a laugh. "That is not my number," I said. "That is the landline for my father's home office, the one he keeps locked." The trap was so complete, it was almost elegant. They had forged my signature to take the debt, then forged a power of attorney to hire a fixer to manage the debt, and listed their own phone number so that if the IRS ever tried to verify anything, the call would ring on my father's desk. I was the puppet, but they had cut my strings so I couldn't even twitch without them pulling a lever. "I want a copy," I said. "I want a copy of the power of attorney. I want a copy of the submission history. I want everything you have on that screen." "I can print the transcript of the filing," Ms. Holloway said. "But the actual image of the document, that is in the imaging system. It takes a moment." "I have time," I said. "I have nothing but time." She typed in the command. The printer whirred again. She handed me the transcript first. I scanned it. It showed the date of receipt, October 14th, the same day as the officer change. It was a coordinated strike. "Ms. Holloway," I said, keeping my voice steady, though my hands were gripping the edge of the desk so hard my fingertips were numb. "You asked me earlier if my father kept my personal papers. You asked if he had access to my information." "I did," she said, watching the printer tray. "He kept everything," I said. "My birth certificate, my social security card, my old tax returns. He told me it was for safekeeping. He told me I would lose them in an apartment move. I believed him. Ms. Holloway nodded slowly. It was a nod of recognition. She had seen this movie before. The parent who cripples the child to keep them close, or to use them as a shield. Here is the image, she said. The printer spat out a single sheet. It was a grainy, black and white reproduction of the faxed power of attorney form. I looked at the signature at the bottom. Again, the rushed, jerky version of my name. But I didn't focus on the signature this time. I looked at the top of the page. When a document is faxed to the IRS, the receiving machine stamps a digital time code on it, but the sending machine also leaves a trace. It is called the Transmit Terminal Identification, or TTI. It usually appears as a small line of text in the header margin. I pointed to the gray strip of text at the very top of the paper. Sent from Quick Copy and Ship, Elm Street Branch, 10:02 a.m. Elm Street, I said. That is 4 blocks from my parents' house. It is the print shop my mother uses to make flyers for the church bake sale. It was a fax submission, Ms. Holloway murmured, leaning in to look at the paper. Not a digital upload. Can you print the cover sheet? I asked. Fax submissions always have a cover sheet. It tells the intake center who the package is for. Ms. Holloway went back to the keyboard. One moment, the machine whirred again. This time, the page that came out was mostly white space, with a few lines of bold text in the center and a handwritten note at the bottom. A T, TN, C, a U, Centralized Authorization Unit, RE, Ren Alexander / Holopine Care Solutions, pages, 4 including cover, and then the handwritten note. It was scrawled in thick, black marker, the kind used to label moving boxes. Urgent, add responsible officer, process today. I stared at the handwriting. The world narrowed down to those 6 words. I knew that G. I knew the way the loop at the bottom pulled to the left, breathless and impatient. I knew the way the E's were capitalized while the rest of the letters were lowercase. It was the handwriting that had written math tutor, 4 p.m. on the kitchen calendar. It was the handwriting that had written don't forget lunch on brown paper bags for 12 years of my life. It was the handwriting that had signed my permission slips for field trips. It was my mother's handwriting. A physical wave of nausea hit me. It was one thing to suspect my father, the architect, the manipulator. He was cold. He was calculating. But seeing my mother's frantic, distinct scrawl on a federal document designed to frame her daughter, that broke something inside me that I didn't know was still intact. She hadn't just gone along with it. She had driven the car. She had gone to the copy shop, stood at the fax machine, and written urgent to ensure the chains were locked onto me as quickly as possible. Ms. Alexander? Ms. Holloway's voice seemed to come from underwater. I looked up. My eyes were dry, but my throat felt like I had swallowed broken glass. That is my mother's handwriting, I said. I didn't whisper it. I said it clearly. That note. She wrote it. Ms. Holloway looked at the paper, then at me. The bureaucratic distance was gone completely. In her eyes, I saw a flash of genuine anger, not at me, but for me. Okay, she said. Okay. She pulled a fresh form from a folder on her desk. Form 8822. Change of address. We are going to fix the communication line right now, she said. I am going to witness your signature. We are going to update your address in the master file to your current apartment. Effective immediately, we are going to revoke the power of attorney. I am going to put a code on your account that requires a PIN number for any future changes. She pushed the paper toward me. Sign it. Use your real signature, the one that doesn't look like that forgery. I took the pen. I pressed down hard, writing my name with deliberate, angry precision. Ren Alexander. I dated it. I am revoking Arthur Vane, I said. I am revoking everyone. Consider him revoked, she said. She took the paper back and stamped it. Received. The sound of the stamp hitting the paper was violent and satisfying. Ms. Alexander, she said, lowering her voice again. I am going to call my supervisor. This fax header, the matching address, the handwriting. This is enough to flag the account for immediate fraud review. We can put a hold on the collection activity while the investigation proceeds. It stops the levy. It stops the seizure. Do it, I said. Please. She reached for the phone on her desk. As she lifted the receiver, the small tablet mounted on the partition wall between us chimed. It was a soft, electronic ping, designed to alert the agent to queue changes or security notifications. Ms. Holloway glanced at the screen. Her hand froze on the phone receiver. She looked at the notification. Then she looked at me. Her expression shifted from professional concern to high alert. Ms. Alexander, she said, her voice very quiet. Did you tell anyone you were coming here specifically? To this building? To this appointment time? No, I said. I booked it online at 3 a.m. I didn't speak to anyone. The front desk security just sent a notification, she said. She turned the tablet slightly so she could read the full message. There is a gentleman at the security checkpoint, she said. He is asking for you by name. He told the guards he is your father and that you are expecting him to help you with the meeting. My blood ran cold. He hadn't just texted, "Don't make this worse." He had tracked me. He is not helping me, I said. I am not expecting him. He is trying to get a visitor pass, Miss Holloway said. He is telling them he has the power of attorney documents in his briefcase. I stood up. The walls of the cubicle suddenly felt very thin. He was downstairs. He was in the building. He was bringing the paper lies to override my living truth. Don't let him up, I said. Ms. Holloway punched a button on her phone. I'm calling the supervisor, she said, and I'm calling security. Ms. Holloway led me away from the open window. We did not speak. The geography of the IRS office changed as we moved deeper into the building. The open, chaotic waiting area with its crying babies and frustrated taxpayers faded behind a heavy security door. The hallway we entered was silent, lined with beige acoustic tiles and closed office doors. It felt less like a customer service center and more like the holding area of a precinct. She opened a door marked Authorized Personnel Only and gestured for me to enter. The room was small, windowless, and aggressively sterile. There was a round table in the center, 3 chairs, and a camera mounted in the corner. The red light on the camera was steady, unblinking. It was recording. A man was already sitting at the table. He did not look like Ms. Holloway. He wore a suit that fit too well, and his tie was a dark, authoritative blue. He had the heavy-lidded, weary expression of a man who had spent 30 years listening to people explain why they didn't think the law applied to them. Ms. Alexander, Ms. Holloway said. This is Mr. Sterling. He is the senior territory manager. Mr. Sterling did not stand up. He nodded at the empty chair across from him. Sit down, please. I sat. The chair was hard plastic. I placed my hands on the table, clasping them together to hide the fact that they wanted to tremble. I was not trembling from fear anymore. I was trembling from the sheer, adrenaline-fueled focus of the hunt. Ms. Holloway has briefed me on the situation, Mr. Sterling said. His voice was gravelly, a low rumble. She tells me you are alleging that the power of attorney on file is fraudulent and that you have no knowledge of the payroll tax liability associated with your name. That is correct, I said. I have never signed a power of attorney. I have never owned a business. I am a victim of identity theft committed by my parents. Mr. Sterling looked at me. He didn't blink. He was reading me, looking for the telltale signs of a tax protester or a frantic debtor trying to invent a loophole. After 5 seconds, he nodded. Just once. We have a gentleman in the lobby. Mr. Sterling said. Mr. Arthur Vane. He claims to be your representative. He claims you are expecting him. I have never met Arthur Vane, I said. I know his name only because I saw his junk mail on my parents' kitchen counter. I see, Mr. Sterling said. He pressed a button on the intercom console on the table. Send him back. The wait was only 2 minutes, but it felt like hours. The room was silent. I could hear the hum of the ventilation system and the beat of my own heart. I stared at the camera lens. I needed to be perfect. I needed to be the most rational person in the room. The door opened. Arthur Vane walked in. He looked exactly like the kind of man who sends postcards promising to settle federal debt for pennies. He was wearing a gray suit that had a subtle sheen to it, likely polyester. He had a gold watch that was too big for his wrist and a smile that was too big for his face. He carried a leather briefcase that looked worn at the corners. He spotted me immediately. "Wren!" he exclaimed, his voice booming with forced familiarity. He walked toward me, hand extended, as if we were old friends meeting for lunch. "Thank goodness I caught you. I was just parking when I got the alert that you were here. We really should have coordinated this better. But no harm done, right? I'm here now." I did not stand up. I did not take his hand. I looked at him with the flat, dead eyes of a shark. "Who are you?" I asked. Vane's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but he recovered quickly. He laughed, a nervous, chuckling sound. "Very funny. You're stressed? I get it. The IRS building does that to people. I'm Arthur Vane. We're on the same team here." "Sit down, Mr. Vane, Mr." Sterling said. He didn't raise his voice, but the command whipped through the air like a lash. Vane looked at Sterling, then at the camera, and his posture stiffened. He realized, perhaps for the first time, that this was not a standard negotiation meeting. He sat down slowly, pulling his briefcase onto his lap as a shield. "State your name and your role for the record." "Mr." Sterling said. Vane cleared his throat. "Arthur Vane, enrolled agent. I am the authorized representative for the taxpayer. Wren Alexander, regarding the liabilities for Holopine Care Solutions." "For the record," I said clearly, looking directly at the camera. "I, Wren Alexander, state that I have never hired this man." Vane looked at me, his eyes widening. "Now, hold on. Let's not get dramatic. There is obviously a miscommunication here." He began to fumble with the latches of his briefcase. They clicked loudly in the quiet room. He pulled out a file folder. "I have the power of attorney right here," Vane said, sliding a document across the table toward Mr. Sterling. "Form 2848, signed and dated October 14th. It grants me full authority to discuss, sign, and negotiate on behalf of Ms. Alexander." Mr. Sterling did not touch the paper. He just looked at it. "Mr. Vane," Sterling said, "did you witness the taxpayer sign this document?" Vane hesitated. It was a micropause, the hesitation of a man quickly calculating the odds of a lie. "It was provided to me by the client." "By the client," Sterling repeated. "Did you speak to Ms. Alexander when she gave it to you?" "Well, the intake process was handled through the family office," Vane said, his voice taking on a slippery, defensive quality. "It's a family business. You know how these things go. The parents are very involved. Mr. Alexander, her father, handed me the file personally. He assured me that Wren, Ms. Alexander, was fully on board and just wanted this handled quietly." "He assured you," I said. I turned my body in the chair to face him fully. "So, you took a federal legal document, authorizing you to make financial decisions for a 31-year-old woman. From a third party? You didn't call me? You didn't email me? You didn't ask to see my ID?" "I have been working with your father for months," Vane snapped, his nice guy veneer cracking. "He pays the retainers. He provides the documentation. He told me you were too anxious to deal with this directly. He said you wanted me to interface with the service so you didn't have to. He pays the retainers." "Mr. Sterling noted. He wrote something down on a notepad. "So, the funds for your representation come from the father, not the taxpayer listing on the liability." "It's a family company," Vane insisted, gesturing with his hands. "Look, I am trying to help here. There is a $247,000 liability hanging over this young woman's head. I have a strategy to get that reduced. I am trying to save her from a levy. If we start splitting hairs about intake procedures, we are wasting time that she doesn't have." We are not splitting hairs, I said. We are establishing fraud. I reached into my bag and pulled out the photocopy of the fax header Ms. Halloway had given me. I slid it across the table, right next to his power of attorney. This was faxed from a copy shop on Elm Street, I said. My mother wrote the cover sheet. You weren't there. I wasn't there. You accepted a forged document from a man who is using my name to hide his own debt, and you didn't check because the check cleared. Vane looked at the fax header. His face went pale. The bluster began to drain out of him. I had no reason to suspect deception. Vane stammered. Mr. Alexander is a respectable businessman. He came to my office. He was very concerned about his daughter's situation. My situation? I asked. Or the situation he created? Mr. Vane, Sterling interrupted. His voice was harder now. You stated that you take direction from the family. Is that correct? I take direction from the authorized contacts, Vane corrected, sweating now. But you just admitted that you have never spoken to Ms. Alexander, Sterling said. Yet you have been filing abatements and negotiation requests in her name for 3 months. Who approved those filings? Vane looked at the door. He looked at his briefcase. He looked anywhere but at me. Her father approved them, Vane whispered. He said he had verbal proxy. There is no such thing as verbal proxy for a federal affidavit, Sterling said. He reached out and pulled the power of attorney document toward him. He did not slide it back to Vane. He placed it on top of his own file. I am confiscating this document as evidence in an active identity theft investigation, Sterling said. Your authorization is officially disputed and suspended effective immediately. Vane stood up. He looked cornered. He tried to rally one last time, to use the only weapon he understood. Fear. You are making a mistake, Vane said, pointing a finger at me. His voice shook with anger. You think you're clever? You think you can just walk away from this? The IRS doesn't care about your family drama. That debt is on your Social Security number. If you revoke me, if you kick me out, the protection lifts. The collection arm will wake up. They will freeze your bank accounts by Monday morning. They will garnish your wages at that risk lab job of yours. I was the only thing standing between you and total financial ruin. I looked at him. I felt absolutely nothing. No fear, no doubt. You weren't standing between me and ruin, I said. You were the shovel they were using to bury me. Don't threaten the taxpayer, Sterling said. He stood up slowly. He was a large man, and when he stood, he blocked the light from the overhead fixture, casting a shadow over Vane. And she is not your client, Mr. Vane. She never was. You have been representing a ghost. I have a signed contract, Vane sputtered. With a forged signature, I said. Which makes you an accessory to fraud if you try to enforce it. Vane snapped his briefcase shut. His hands were shaking. I am leaving. I will be contacting my legal counsel, and I will be contacting Mr. Alexander to explain that his daughter has gone rogue. You do that, Sterling said. But be advised, any further communication from your office to the IRS regarding this taxpayer will be flagged as unauthorized interference. And Mr. Vane? We review the licenses of enrolled agents who facilitate identity theft thoroughly. Vane didn't speak. He turned and walked to the door, his movements jerky and uncoordinated. He yanked the handle and disappeared into the hallway. The silence returned to the room. Mr. Sterling sat back down. He looked at the power of attorney form on his desk. He picked up a red stamp and slammed it down on the paper. Void. You handled that well, he said. It was not a compliment. It was an observation. I analyze risk for a living, I said. Mr. Vane was a high-risk variable. I just removed him. We will process the revocation, Sterling said. And we will flag the account. But Vane was right about one thing. Your father is involved. And unlike Vane, who is just a greedy opportunist, your father is motivated by survival. That makes him dangerous. The tablet on the table chimed again. Ms. Halloway. who had been standing silently by the door, stepped forward to check it. She frowned. "Mr. Sterling?" she said. "Security at the main desk is updating the status." "Is Vane leaving?" Sterling asked. "Vane is leaving," she said. "But there is another issue. The man claiming to be the father, he isn't waiting in the lobby anymore." My heart skipped a beat. "Where is he?" I asked. "He told the guards he had a medical emergency and needed to use the restroom." Ms. Holloway read from the screen. "He bypassed the checkpoint while they were dealing with Vane. Security has lost visual on him in the lower corridor." "He's in the building," I said. The realization hit me like a physical blow. My father wasn't downstairs waiting for permission. He had used the distraction of Vane's exit, the chaos of the fixer leaving, to slip through the cracks. It was exactly how he operated. He created a diversion, and while everyone was looking at the noise, he moved into the blind spot. "He knows I'm here," I said. "He knows Vane failed. He's coming to stop me." "Mr." Sterling picked up the phone. "Lock down the elevators to this floor," he said into the receiver. "We have an intruder." He looked at me. "You are not going to see him," Sterling said. "We have a back exit. Ms. Holloway will take you to your car." "No," I said. I stood up. "He didn't come here to talk. He came here to make sure I don't sign that affidavit. If I leave now, he wins. He'll say I ran away because I was guilty." I reached for the pen on the table. "Give me the affidavit," I said. "I'm signing it. Now, before he gets to this door." "Mr." Sterling looked at me with a new expression. It wasn't pity. It was respect. He slid the document toward me. "Sign it," he said. I uncapped the pen. My hand was steady. Outside in the hallway, I heard the faint ding of an elevator arriving. Despite the lockdown order, someone had made it up before the switch was thrown. I put the pen to the paper. I didn't just sign my name. I carved it. Mr. Sterling did not unlock the door. He moved to it, but he did not open it. He stood with his back against the frame, his hand resting near the deadbolt, effectively becoming a second barrier between the sterile interrogation room and the hallway. "Stay seated," he said. His voice was low, devoid of the alarm that was spiking in my own chest. "You do not go out there. He does not come in here. That is the rule." I sat in the hard plastic chair, my hands gripping the edge of the table until my knuckles turned the color of old bone. The room was soundproofed for privacy, but it was not soundproofed against the kind of voice my father possessed. My father did not yell. Yelling implies a loss of control. My father projected. He used his voice like a physical object, throwing it into spaces to displace the air that other people were trying to breathe. "I am her father." The voice came from the corridor. It was muffled, but the cadence was unmistakable. It was the tone of reasonable, suffering authority. It was the tone he used when he returned a meal at a restaurant after eating half of it. "Sir, you cannot pass this point," a security guard's voice replied. It sounded thin and young compared to the heavy baritone of my father. "You are not listening to me," my father said. He was enunciating clearly, likely for the benefit of anyone within a 50-foot radius. "My daughter is in there. She is undergoing a mental health crisis. She does not understand what she is doing. I am here to facilitate. I am here to make sure she doesn't make a mistake that ruins her future." I looked at Ms. Holloway. She was typing rapidly on her tablet, transcribing the altercation. "He is establishing a narrative," I said quietly. "He is trying to invalidate my testimony by invalidating my sanity. We know." "Mr." Sterling said. He didn't move from the door. "Let him talk. The more he talks, the more he digs." "She is a dependent," my father's voice boomed. The word hit me like a physical slap. Dependent, in tax law. A dependent is a specific classification. It is a child, a relative, someone you support, someone who cannot survive without your financial umbrella. In my family, it was a psychological shackle. He used the word to strip me of my age. I was 31. I paid my own rent. I bought my own groceries. I had not taken a dollar from them in 9 years. But in that hallway, just a few feet away, he was rewriting reality. He was turning me back into a 6-year-old holding his hand, incapable of crossing the street alone. "Sir, she is an adult," another voice said. This one sounded like a supervisor from security. "She checked in with valid identification. She is conducting business with the Treasury. Unless you have a warrant or a court order, you have no standing here." There was a silence. I could imagine my father's face, the tightening of the jaw, the narrowing of the eyes. He was hitting a wall he couldn't charm or bully his way through, so he pivoted. "I am not just her father," he said. The aggression dropped out of his voice, replaced by a smooth, conspiratorial concern. "I am here to report a crime. I am here to report identity theft." I gasped. The audacity of it took the air out of the room. "He is trying to file the report first," I whispered. "If he files the report claiming I am the victim, he becomes the witness. He becomes the ally. He controls the investigation." "He is trying to get ahead of the affidavit you just signed," Sterling said. He reached for the doorknob. "Ms. Holloway, stay with Ms. Alexander." Sterling opened the door and stepped out, closing it instantly behind him. The lock clicked. Now I was listening to a conversation where I could only hear half the players, but I knew the script by heart. "Mr. Alexander," Sterling's voice was audible now, muffled but distinct. "I am the territory manager. You are making a disturbance in a federal facility." "I am trying to help," my father insisted. "My daughter, Wren, she's confused. Someone has been using her name. I found out about it this morning. I came straight here to clear this up. I have the documents to prove she is innocent." "We are already discussing the matter with the taxpayer," Sterling said. "But you are not getting the whole story," my father countered. "She is emotional. She imagines things. She has a history of paranoia. If she is telling you that family members are involved, you need to understand that she holds grudges. She will destroy this family over a misunderstanding. She is vindictive." I closed my eyes. Vindictive, paranoid, unstable. He was listing his own traits and assigning them to me. It was his favorite magic trick. He projected his own darkness onto me so brightly that he could stand in the light and look like the saint. My phone buzzed on the table. I opened my eyes. The screen lit up with a message. "Mom." I stared at the preview. "Please stop. Wren, your father can't take this. His heart isn't strong. Do you want to kill him? Just come outside. We can fix this." The pincer movement. My father applied the pressure. My mother applied the guilt. She was the softener. She was the one who made you feel like a monster for protecting yourself. His heart isn't strong. His heart was fine. His heart was a machine made of iron and ego. "Ms. Holloway," I said. She looked up. "My mother just texted me," I said. "She is threatening me with my father's health to get me to stop the meeting." "Show me," she said. I held up the phone. She took a picture of the screen with her tablet. "Forward the text to the email address I gave you earlier," she instructed. "Do not reply. Just forward it. It goes into the case file as witness intimidation." "Witness intimidation," I repeated. The phrase felt heavy and solid, like a brick. It wasn't family drama anymore. It was a felony. I forwarded the text. Outside, the volume was dropping. Mr. Sterling was no longer debating. He was commanding. "Sir, you have been denied access," Sterling said. "You have attempted to interfere with an active interview. Security will escort you to your vehicle. If you return to this floor, you will be arrested for trespassing on federal property." "You are making a mistake," my father said. His voice was cold now. The mask of the concerned parent had slipped, revealing the predator underneath. "You are listening to a liar." "I am listening to the taxpayer," Sterling replied. "Goodbye, Mr. Alexander." I heard footsteps, heavy, angry footsteps retreating down the hall. Then the chime of the elevator. The door to the interrogation room opened. "Mr. Sterling stepped back in. He didn't look triumphant. He looked tired. "He is gone," Sterling said. "For now." "He said I was vindictive," I said. "He said I would destroy the family." "I heard him," Sterling said. He sat down and pulled a fresh form from his folder, and every word of it went into the security log. He established motive. He established hostility. He did more to prove your case in 3 minutes than we could have done in 3 weeks of auditing. He pushed the paper across the table. "This is the final piece for today," Sterling said. "Form 8822. We are confirming the address change, but I am adding a flag. Code 49. "What is Code 49? I asked. "It is a suppression lock," Ms. Holloway explained. "It means that no piece of mail with your social security number on it will ever go to that house again, even if they try to change it back. Even if they forge your signature again, the system will reject it. They have lost the mailbox." I looked at the paper. 479 Oak Hollow Lane was listed in the old address box. I drew a line through it, a thick black line. I signed the bottom. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now, we investigate," Sterling said. "We pull the bank records for Hollow Pine. We trace the IP addresses of the digital filings. We interview the notary who stamped that affidavit. But you go back to work. You go back to your life." "He knows where I live," I said. "He does," Sterling agreed. "But he also knows that you are now a protected witness in a federal fraud case. If he shows up at your door, if he threatens you, if he so much as parks across the street, you call us. We have a liaison with the local police. They will treat it as harassment of a federal witness." He stood up. "We are not going to send you out the front," he said. "He might be waiting in the lobby, or outside the glass. We have a staff exit that leads to the side lot." Ms. Holloway gathered my files. "I will walk you out." We walked through the back corridors of the building. It smelled of floor wax and old paper. We passed rows of cubicles where people were quietly auditing the lives of strangers. I realized, with a strange jolt, that I was one of those files now. But for the first time, I wasn't the target. I was the whistleblower. We reached a heavy metal door with a push bar. "Wren," Miss Holloway said. She didn't use my title. She looked at me with a softness I hadn't seen before. "You did the hard part. The math is easy. The emotional calculus, that is the hard part." "I know," I said. "Don't answer the phone," she advised. "Let them scream into the void." I pushed the door open. The air outside was cold and crisp. It was mid-morning now. The sun was glaring off the asphalt of the parking lot. I walked to my car. I scanned the rows of vehicles. I looked for his black SUV. I looked for the silver sedan my mother drove. The lot was full of cars. But none of them belonged to my parents. They were gone. I unlocked my Honda and got in. I locked the doors immediately. I sat there for a moment, waiting for the relief to wash over me. But it didn't come. My father hadn't stayed to yell. He hadn't waited by the exit to ambush me. He hadn't tried to block my car. He had left. Silence is not peace. In my family, silence is strategy. When my father yelled, he was venting. When he was silent, he was planning. He had tried the charm. He had tried the authority. He had tried the victimhood. He had tried the smear. None of it had worked. The wall of the IRS had held. So now, he would look for a different wall, a weaker wall. I started the engine. The radio came on, playing a pop song about heartbreak. I turned it off. I checked my rearview mirror. The space behind me was empty. "Your move," I whispered to the empty car. I put the car in reverse and backed out. I didn't go home. I didn't go to work. I drove toward the one place where emotions didn't exist. Only statutes and filings. I drove toward the state courthouse. If they were going to play chess, I was going to flip the board. I sat in my car in the parking lot of the state courthouse, the engine idling. The air conditioning was blasting cold air against my face, but I could still feel the heat of the encounter in the federal building radiating off my skin. I had stopped the immediate bleeding. I had revoked the power of attorney. I had locked the mailbox. But Mr. Sterling's words echoed in the small cabin of my Honda. Now, we investigate. The IRS deals with federal taxes. But a limited liability company is a creature of the state. If my parents had set me up as the fall guy for federal payroll taxes, they had to have established the framework at the state level first. You cannot be a treasurer of a ghost. You need a body. I pulled my laptop out of my bag and tethered it to my phone's hotspot. The connection was slow, the little loading circles spinning with agonizing lethargy. I navigated to the Secretary of State's business search portal. It was a clunky, outdated government website, the kind that looks like it hasn't been updated since 2010. I typed in the search bar, Hollow Pine Care Solutions. The results populated instantly. Entity ID 804492. Status active. Filing date March 3, 2022. I clicked on the History tab. I wanted to see the articles of organization. I wanted to see who started this thing. The original filing listed my father, Robert Alexander, as the organizer and registered agent. That was expected, but then I scrolled down to the section labeled Principals. My breath hitched. There were 3 names listed: Robert Alexander, member; Ellen Alexander, member; Ren Alexander, member/manager. I stared at the screen, my eyes drying out because I had forgotten to blink. Member, in an LLC. A member is an owner. I wasn't just an employee they had slapped a title on. I wasn't just a treasurer handling the books. According to the state of California, I owned 33% of this company, and I was listed as a manager. In legal terms, a manager-managed LLC gives the manager the authority to bind the company to contracts, to take out loans, and to make executive decisions. They had not just given me a share of the sinking ship, they had made me the captain. I clicked on the most recent filing, and statement of information filed just 3 weeks ago. It was a digital filing, no wet ink, no pen on paper, just a click of a button acknowledging that the information was true under penalty of perjury. I looked at the contact information associated with the filing. The email address for the registered agent, me, was listed right there: Ren Alexander management@gmail.com. I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck. That was not my email. My email was ren.m.alexander. They had created a shadow account. It was professional. It looked correct. If a vendor or a state auditor looked at that, they would assume it was my dedicated business address. I opened a new tab and tried to log into that email account, just to see. I typed in the address. I clicked, Forgot password. The recovery prompt came up. Get a verification code sent to phone number ending in 198, my father's home office line. The loop was perfect. They created an email that looked like mine, controlled it with their phone, and used it to verify their identity as me on state portals. They were not just impersonating me, they were intercepting reality before it could reach me. I went back to the Secretary of State records. I downloaded everything, every amendment, every annual report. I saw the pattern. For the first 2 years, I wasn't there. Then, 18 months ago, an amendment was filed adding me as a member. Then, 6 months ago, right before the payroll taxes stopped being paid, another amendment changed my title to manager and treasurer. They had walked me up the stairs to the guillotine 1 step at a time. So slowly I hadn't noticed the elevation change. I needed to know how deep this went. A business entity is just paperwork. To do real damage, you need a bank account. I opened a new browser window and navigated to the annual credit report site. You get 1 free report a year from each bureau. I usually checked mine in January. It was fate that I hadn't done it yet. I answered the security questions, which, ironically, my parents could have answered better than I could, and waited for the report to generate. It loaded. I scrolled past my student loans, past my credit card, past my car lease, and there it was, under the section labeled Inquiries within the last 2 years. Regional Trust Bank. Business checking inquiry. Date: August 15th. August again. The summer of the setup. I scrolled down to open accounts. There was a new trade line. It wasn't a personal credit card. It was a commercial line of credit, personally guaranteed. Limit: $50,000. Balance: $49,800. Status: past due. I let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. They had maxed it out. Of course they had. They had opened a line of credit in the company name, used my pristine credit score as the personal guarantee, drained the money, and then stopped paying. But how? A bank requires a signature, a real signature. You have to sit in a chair and sign a signature card. You have to show ID, unless... I closed my eyes, forcing my brain to rewind. I went back to last year, not August, earlier, maybe March. I remembered a Sunday brunch. My mother had been talking about insurance. She was worried about accidents and coverage. She had said they were updating their family umbrella policy to include me, just in case something happened. It's all digital now. Ren, she had said, pushing her iPad across the table. I just need you to sign this DocuSign thing so we can add you as a beneficiary. It doesn't cost you a dime. I had looked at it. It was a generic-looking form. I had tapped the screen, created a digital signature, and clicked Finish. I opened my eyes. They hadn't just used that signature for insurance. When you create a digital signature in those apps, it saves the profile. If they had access to the account, which was on my mother's iPad, they could drag and drop that verified, time-stamped digital signature onto any PDF they wanted. They didn't need to forge my hand. They had harvested my digital fingerprint. I grabbed my phone. I needed to talk to someone who understood the architecture of this nightmare, not the IRS. The IRS only cared about the tax. This was civil fraud. This was theft of personhood. I dialed the number for a lawyer a colleague had recommended during a happy hour once, Elias Thorne. He specialized in complex family litigation, which was a polite way of saying he sued relatives who stole from each other. Thorne Law, a receptionist answered. I have an emergency, I said. My name is Ren Alexander. I am currently listed as the manager of a company I do not own, and I have just discovered a $50,000 line of credit I did not open. I need to speak to Mr. Thorne. 10 minutes later, I was on the line with him. I explained it all. The IRS notice, the fake email, the state filings, the digital signature harvesting. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, the silence on the line was heavy. Ren, he said. His voice was deep, devoid of the bureaucratic indifference of the government agents. You need to understand what you are looking at. This isn't just theft. Theft is taking your wallet. This is different. What is it? I asked. They are building a golem, he said. The image made me shiver. They have constructed a legal version of you, he continued. This entity, let's call it Paper Ren, has your name, your social security number, your digital signature, and a dedicated email address. Paper. Ren owns a failing business. Paper Ren takes out loans. Paper Ren owes the government $250,000. They are piloting this avatar from the safety of their home, and when it crashes, the wreckage lands on you. How do I kill it? I asked. How do I kill Paper Ren? We file a suit for declarative judgment, he said. We ask a judge to declare the filings void ab initio, void from the beginning. We file police reports for identity theft in every jurisdiction where a document was filed, and we send cease and desist letters to every bank, every vendor, and the Secretary of State. Do it, I said. I want to scorch the earth. It will cost money, he warned, and it will be a war. They will say you authorized it. They will say you are a disgruntled partner trying to stick them with the bill. I have the text messages, I said. I have the fax header. I have the timelines. Good, he said. I will start drafting the revocation letters today. But Ren, you need to lock down everything else. If they have gone this far, they won't stop at the business. They will try to destabilize your employment. They need you desperate. If you lose your income, you become vulnerable. That is when they will offer to help you again. My employment, I whispered. I looked at the dashboard clock. It was 11:30. I had been gone from work for 3 hours. I hadn't called in. I had been too busy fighting for my life. I have to go, I said. I hung up and immediately dialed the main line for Redwood Harbor Risk Lab. Human Resources, a cheerful voice answered. It was Sarah, the HR coordinator. We usually chatted about her cats. Sarah, it's Ren, I said. I'm so sorry. I had a personal emergency this morning. I'm heading in now. There was a pause, a long, uncomfortable pause that told me everything I needed to know. Oh, Ren, Sarah said. Her voice was no longer cheerful. It was guarded. I'm glad you called. We actually just had a very strange phone call about you. My stomach dropped through the floor of the car. A call? I asked. From who? They didn't give a name, Sarah said, lowering her voice. But they sounded older, a man. He said he was a concerned family member. He wanted to know if we were aware of the federal tax investigation involving our compliance analyst. He said something about wage garnishment orders being processed and wanted to know if we had a protocol for employees with criminal fraud flags. I closed my eyes and leaned my head against the steering wheel. He hadn't waited. My father hadn't waited a day. He hadn't waited an hour. He had walked out of the federal building, gotten into his car, and called my employer. He knew that in my industry, risk management, integrity is the only currency. If a compliance analyst is suspected of fraud, they are a liability. He was trying to get me fired. He was trying to cut off my supply lines. Sarah, I said, my voice shaking with a rage so pure it felt like ice. Listen to me very carefully. That call was an act of retaliation. I am currently a victim of identity theft. I have just left the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. I have a case number. I have a lawyer. That caller was the perpetrator trying to discredit me. Oh my God, Sarah whispered. I am bringing documentation, I said. I am bringing a letter from the IRS confirming that I am the victim, not the suspect. Do not put anything in my file until I get there. Do not talk to him again. Okay, she said. Okay, Ren, just get here safe. I ended the call. I stared at the windshield. The world outside looked the same. The asphalt, the cars, the sky. But the landscape of my life had been burned to ash. My father had called my job. He had crossed the final line. There was no going back to Sunday dinners. There was no going back to family misunderstandings. This was an attempt to murder my career to cover his own crimes. I opened the state records folder on my laptop. I saved the credit report. I saved the Secretary of State screenshots. Then I created a new subfolder. I named it Attacks. I drove out of the parking lot. I wasn't driving fast. I was driving with the terrifying precision of a person who has nothing left to lose but the truth. They wanted a war. They wanted to build a paper Ren and set it on fire. They were about to find out that the real Ren was fireproof. I walked into Redwood Harbor Risk Lab at 12:15 in the afternoon. My badge worked. The light on the scanner turned green, a small, cheerful beep that felt incongruous with the radioactive disaster of my personal life. I walked past the open-plan desks, past colleagues debating lunch options and spreadsheet formulas. They looked at me with the usual casual nods. They did not know that 3 hours ago I had been sitting in a federal interrogation room. They did not know that my father had called the main line to try and detonate my career. I went straight to Human Resources. Sarah was sitting behind her desk, her posture rigid. Next to her sat David, my direct manager. David was a good man, a man who liked clear data and quarterly projections. He looked uncomfortable, shifting in his ergonomic chair as if it were suddenly made of nails. Ren, David said. He didn't smile. We were just discussing the situation. I closed the door behind me. I did not sit down immediately. I walked to the table and opened my bag. I pulled out the document Mr. Sterling had given me, the stamped, verified affidavit of identity theft. along with the case number from the Criminal Investigation Division. I slid the papers across the desk. They hit the wood with a heavy, authoritative sound. "There is no situation, David," I said. My voice was steady, pitched low. "There is a crime, and I am the victim of it." Sarah picked up the papers. Her eyes scanned the official IRS header, the red stamps, the bold text stating Identity Theft Affidavit. I watched her face change, the wariness, the suspicion planted by my father's phone call, began to dissolve, replaced by the shock of seeing federal confirmation. "This is dated today," Sarah said, looking up at me. "I came straight from the federal building," I said. "The person who called you this morning? That was the perpetrator. He knew I was meeting with investigators. He called here to discredit me in hopes that if I lost my job, I would lose the resources to fight him." David let out a long breath. He rubbed his face with his hand. "He didn't just ask about the tax issue. Ren," David said quietly. "He identified himself as your father. He sounded remarkably sane. He told us that you were suffering from a severe breakdown. He asked to initiate a request for indefinite medical leave on your behalf. He said he needed to come and collect your personal effects because you wouldn't be returning to the office for several months." The room seemed to tilt. Indefinite medical leave. It was a masterstroke of manipulation. If I quit, I could get unemployment. If I was fired, I could get severance. But if I was placed on unpaid medical leave at the request of a family guardian, I would be in limbo. No paycheck, no insurance, no grounds to sue. I would be frozen, and without a salary. How long could I pay rent? 1 month? 2? Eventually, the money would run out, and when the eviction notice came, where would I go? Come home. Ren. They were trying to starve me out. They were trying to cut the supply lines so I would be forced to crawl back to the very house where they had stolen my name. "I am not having a breakdown," I said. I looked David in the eye. "I am the lead compliance analyst for the Northeast sector. I am fully capable of performing my duties. The only threat to this company is the external party attempting to manipulate our HR protocols." "He was very convincing," Sarah whispered. "He knew your employee ID number." "Because he has my old pay stubs," I said. "He has everything, but he does not have this." I tapped the affidavit. "We believe you," David said. The relief in his voice was palpable. He didn't want to lose an analyst. He just didn't want a liability. "What do you need us to do?" "I need to create a record," I said. "I'm going to send you an email summarizing this conversation. I need you to reply confirming that I have disclosed the identity theft and that my employment status is active and in good standing. And I need a protocol put in place. No calls from external parties regarding my status are to be put through. If he calls again, you tell him to contact my legal counsel." "Done," Sarah said. She was typing already. "I'll flag your file. No information release. We treat it like a stalking case." "Thank you," I said. I walked back to my desk. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt like a soldier who had just repelled a breach at the perimeter wire. They had tested the fence, and the fence had held, but they would try again. I sat down and wrote the email. I was precise. I attached the scan of the IRS document. I copied my personal email, the real one, so I would have access to the thread even if I was locked out of the corporate server later. Subject: Notification of Identity Theft and Security Protocol. Body: As discussed, I am currently cooperating with a federal investigation regarding the unauthorized use of my personal information. I hit send. Then I called Elias Thorne's office. "The cease and desist is drafted," his paralegal told me. "We are sending it via certified mail to Arthur Vane and to your parents. We are also sending a revocation of authority to Vane's office via fax and email, so he can't claim he didn't receive it until the mail arrived." "Add a line," I said, staring at my computer screen. "Tell Vane that if he attempts to contact my employer again, or if he facilitates any communication intended to disrupt my employment, we will file a complaint with the Office of Professional Responsibility and sue him personally for tortious interference." "We can do that," she said. "We'll make it scary. Make it terrifying, I said. I spent the next hour doing the invisible, tedious work of modern survival. I went to the websites of the 3 credit bureaus. I didn't just put a fraud alert on my files. I froze them. I created PIN numbers that were random strings of digits, writing them down in a physical notebook because I no longer trusted the cloud. I changed my passwords, every single one: email, banking, Netflix, the library app. If it had a login, I changed it. I turned on 2-factor authentication for everything. But I didn't use SMS verification. I knew how easy it was to spoof a SIM card. I downloaded an authenticator app that generated codes locally on my device. I was building a digital fortress. I was pulling up the drawbridge, but there was one gate still open: the state records, the limited liability company, Hollowpine Care Solutions. I navigated back to the Secretary of State's portal. I found the section for filing a complaint regarding false business filings. It was a PDF form, obscure and buried deep in the sitemap. I filled it out. I attached the police report number, which I didn't have yet, but I would get tonight. Then I called the state filing office. I need a certified copy, I told the clerk. I need the amendment to the Articles of Organization filed on August 12th, and I need the Statement of Information filed 3 weeks ago. You can download those for free, the clerk said, sounding bored. I don't need the download, I said. I need the certified copy, the one with the gold seal, the one that holds up in court, and I need to see the notary acknowledgement on the paper submission. Paper submission? The clerk asked. Most things are digital. The system says the amendment regarding the manager change was a paper submission, I said. Someone mailed it in, which means someone notarized a signature. Okay, she said. I see it. We can overnight that to you. There is a fee. I'll pay it, I said. Send it to this address. I gave her my apartment address. Enunciating clearly, I hung up. My phone rang. It was not a number I recognized. It was a local area code, but the digits were unfamiliar. I stared at it. My instinct was to let it go to voicemail. Mr. Sterling had said don't answer the phone, but I knew who it was. My father wouldn't call from his own phone anymore. He knew I had blocked him. He knew I was recording him. He was calling from a burner, or a payphone, if those even existed anymore. I picked it up. I didn't say hello. I just pressed the record button on my external dictation device, another tool of my trade, and held the phone to my ear. You are destroying this family. It was him. No preamble, no greeting, just the heavy, disappointed judgment of a patriarch. I am not destroying anything, I said. My voice was calm, almost bored. I am correcting a clerical error. Isn't that what you told the security guard? That I was confused? You know what this will do, he said. His voice dropped lower. The audit, the investigation. If they look at the books for the business, Ren, they aren't just going to look at the tax. They are going to look at everything. Do you want your mother to go through that? Do you want to see her on the stand? Mom is a grown woman, I said. She signed the checks. She wrote the fax cover sheet. She made her choices. She did it for us, he snapped. For the future. For you. Who do you think was going to inherit the business? It was all going to be yours. A debt is not an inheritance, I said. And a crime scene is not a legacy. Stop the lawyer, he demanded. Call the IRS. Tell them you remembered. Tell them you signed it and forgot. We can fix the money. I can move funds. I can sell the boat. But you have to stop the investigation. I can't stop it, I said. It's the government. Once the wheel starts turning, it doesn't stop. You can recant, he said. If you recant, it goes away. Tell them you were off your meds. Tell them you were stressed. I'm not on meds, Dad, I said. And I'm not crazy. You are acting like it, he said. You are attacking your own flesh and blood. Why did you call my boss? I asked. The line went silent. I know you called HR, I continued. I know you tried to put me on medical leave. Why? So I wouldn't have a paycheck? So I couldn't pay my rent? So I would have to move back into my old room so you could watch me? I was worried about you, he said. The lie was so thin it was transparent. No, I said. You were worried that if I stayed at work, I would check my email. You were worried I would find the notices. You wanted me in the house. You wanted to intercept my mail. You are being paranoid. Am I? I asked. Did you or did you not change my address with the IRS to your house 6 months ago, and then change it back to my apartment 3 weeks ago? Silence. You wanted the seizure letter to hit my door, I said. You wanted the shock to break me. You thought I would call you crying, and you would swoop in like the hero and say, "Don't worry, Ren, just sign this power of attorney and Daddy will fix it." And I would have signed it. I would have signed anything to make the fear go away. And then you would have pinned the whole debt on me legally and walked away clean. I would never hurt you, he whispered. It was the most terrifying thing he had said yet. You already did, I said. You stole my name. You stole my credit. You stole my trust. Ren, he said. Please. Do you want to know the real reason I'm not stopping? I asked. He didn't answer. Because you didn't ask for help, I said. If you had come to me a year ago and said, "We are drowning. We made a mistake," I would have helped. I would have given you my savings. I would have helped you file for bankruptcy. But you didn't ask. You took. You looked at me, and you didn't see a daughter. You saw a credit score. That is not true, he said. It is true, I said. And now, the only thing I am to you is a witness against you. I hung up. I blocked the number. I sat at my desk for a long time. Staring at the black screen of the phone, I felt hollowed out. The truth had been spoken, and it hadn't set me free. It had just confirmed that the cage was real. I worked until 6. I kept my head down. I processed 3 risk assessments for a shipping logistics firm. I focused on the numbers. Numbers were clean. Numbers didn't lie about loving you. When I got home, there was a package waiting for me. It wasn't on the mat. It was in the parcel locker. I had to use a key to get it. It was a flat, rigid envelope from the Secretary of State. The overnight delivery I had paid $50 for. I took it upstairs. I locked the door. I poured myself a glass of water. I opened the envelope. Inside were the certified copies of the business filings. The paper was thick, textured, with the gold seal of the state embossed in the corner. I flipped past the articles of organization. I flipped past the digital receipts. I found the amendment filed 18 months ago. The one that added me as a manager. It was a paper form, scanned into the system, but the original had been ink. There was my signature, forged, and next to it was the notary block. State of California, County of Sacramento, on this day, before me, personally appeared Ren Alexander, proved to me on the basis of satisfactory evidence to be the person whose name is subscribed. I looked at the notary's stamp. It was a purple circle. Patricia Gable, Notary Public, Patricia Gable. I knew that name. I knew that face. Patricia Gable was Mrs. Gable. She sat 3 pews behind us at church. She came to our 4th of July barbecues. She made potato salad with too much mustard. She was my mother's prayer partner. My mother hadn't just forged my signature. She had taken the forgery to her best friend, and Patricia Gable, a woman who had known me since I was in braces, had stamped it. She had lied for them. She had looked at a piece of paper signed by a ghost, and she had stamped it with the authority of the state because my mother probably told her some sob story about helping Ren with paperwork. Or maybe she was in on it. It didn't matter. The betrayal wasn't just vertical, from parent to child. It was horizontal. It was the whole community. The entire network of adults I had grown up trusting was willing to conspire to erase me if it meant protecting the image of the good family. I took a picture of the notary stamp. I saved it to the records folder. Then I called Elias Thorne's office again and left a voicemail. It's Ren. I have the state filings. The notary is a family friend. Add her to the lawsuit. Sue her for notary fraud. Sue her for everything she has. I put the papers down. I walked to the window and looked out at the parking lot. I was alone, but for the first time in my life, I realized that being alone wasn't a failure. It was a position of strength. They were a crowd of liars. I was a single point of truth, and I was just getting started. The text message from my mother arrived at 6:15 in the morning, vibrating against the nightstand like a trapped insect. It's just a misunderstanding. Honey, we spoke to the lawyer. If you just sign this paper to correct the clerical error, it all goes away. We can put this behind us. Please, for the family. I stared at the screen, my eyes gritty from lack of sleep. The words were soft, maternal, and terrifyingly calculated. Clerical error. It was a phrase designed to minimize a felony. It suggested a typo, a misplaced decimal, a box checked by accident. It did not suggest a 2-year campaign of systematic identity theft. I forwarded the text to Elias Thorne. Then I called him. "Do not reply," Elias said. Answering on the first ring, he sounded wide awake. "Do not ask what the paper is. Do not ask for a copy via email. They are trying to get you to engage." "She says it's to correct the error," I said, sitting up in bed and pulling the duvet around my shoulders. The morning air in my apartment felt thin and cold. "Ren," Elias said, his voice dropping into the lecture mode I was beginning to find comforting. "There is no such thing as a correction for a document you never signed. If you sign a paper that says, 'I authorize the correction of the previous filing,' you are implicitly admitting that the previous filing was yours to correct. You are validating the original act. You are transforming yourself from a victim of fraud into a business partner who made a mistake." They want to ratify it, I realized. They want me to retroactively agree to be the manager so that the debt becomes a civil dispute instead of a criminal case. "Exactly," Elias said. "They are trying to lure you back into the circle of liability. If you sign, the IRS criminal investigation stops because there is no longer a crime. There is just a family business with bad bookkeeping, and you are the treasurer of that business." "I want to see them," I said. The line went silent. "I don't think that is wise," Elias said. "I need to see the document," I said. "I need to know exactly what they are trying to make me sign. And I need to look my father in the eye when I refuse to do it. If I hide, he thinks he's winning. He thinks I'm scared. I need him to see that I am not scared. I am done." Elias sighed. "If we do this, we do it on my turf, my office, my conference room, my cameras, and we record everything." "Set it up," I said. I arrived at Elias Thorne's office at 9 o'clock. It was a fortress of glass and steel in the financial district, a world away from the dusty, chaotic warmth of my parents' house. The conference room was large, with a long mahogany table that reflected the gray city skyline. Elias met me at the door. He held a tablet in his hand. "Before they get here," he said. "You need to see this." He tapped the screen. It was an email, time-stamped at 8:30 that morning. From Office of Arthur Vane, Enrolled Agent, to Ren Alexander, care of Elias Thorne, subject, proposed installment. Agreement. Urgent. I felt the blood drain from my face. "He revoked Vane," I said. "I revoked him yesterday. The IRS revoked him. Vane is ignoring the revocation," Elias said grimly. "Or he is pretending he hasn't received it yet. Look at the attachment." He opened the PDF. It was a form requesting a monthly payment plan for the $247,000. It proposed a payment of $2,500 a month for the next 7 years. And on the signature line, typed neatly in black ink, "Ren Alexander, taxpayer." "They are still trying to bind you," Elias said. "They are firing on all cylinders. This email is an attempt to establish a negotiation history. If this goes to court, Vane will argue that he was actively negotiating a settlement for you, which implies you accepted the debt." "He is desperate," I said. "He knows he is going to lose his license." "He is terrified," Elias corrected. "And terrified people are dangerous. But your parents, they are coming here thinking they can charm you. They think the legal system is just another neighbor they can manipulate." "Let them try," I said. I placed my bag on the table. I took out my evidence. I laid it out like a surgeon laying out instruments. The fax header showing the transmission from the copy shop, the cover sheet with my mother's handwriting, the text message threatening my father's health, the email from HR detailing the attempt to put me on medical leave, the certified copy of the state filing, the picture of Patricia Gable's notary stamp. I sat down at the head of the table. I waited. At 10 o'clock precisely, the receptionist opened the door. "Mr. and Mrs. Alexander," she announced. They walked in. My mother looked smaller than I remembered. She was wearing a beige cardigan and no makeup. A calculated choice to appear frail and sympathetic. She was clutching her purse with both hands. When she saw me, her face crumpled. "Wren," she breathed, taking a step forward. "Oh, Wren." My father walked behind her. He was wearing his church suit. He did not look frail. He looked like a man who was inconvenienced by a traffic jam. He scanned the room, noting the camera in the corner, the pile of documents on the table, and Elias standing by the window. He did not look at me. He looked at the situation. "Sit down," Elias said. He did not offer them coffee. They sat at the opposite end of the table. The distance between us was 10 feet of polished mahogany, but it felt like an ocean. "We don't need all this formality," my father said, waving a hand at the room. "This is a family matter. We just need to clear up some paperwork." "This is a legal matter," Elias said, sitting down next to me. "And for the record, this meeting is being recorded." "That's fine," my father said. "We have nothing to hide. We are just here to help our daughter out of a mess." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a single sheet of paper. He slid it across the table. It hissed against the varnish. "This is what we need you to sign," he said. "It's a simple acknowledgement. It tells the IRS that there was a miscommunication regarding the filings and that we are restructuring the business to handle the liabilities internally. Once you sign this, we take over the payments. You walk away free." I didn't reach for the paper. I looked at my mother. She was weeping softly, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "Please, Wren," she sobbed. "We just want to fix it. We don't want you to worry about money. Just sign it and come home for dinner. I'm making pot roast." Pot roast, the weaponization of nostalgia. I reached out and took the paper. It was titled, "Affidavit of Administrative Oversight and Ratification of Acts." I began to read. It was written in dense legalese, likely drafted by Vane or a cheap online legal service. It started innocuously enough, stating that there were errors in the address, but then I reached paragraph 3. The undersigned acknowledges that while she held authority as manager during the tax periods in question, the daily operations were delegated to third parties. I stopped. I read it again. While she held authority as manager, I looked up. "This isn't a correction," I said. "This is a confession." "It's standard language," my father said quickly. "It just means you were on the paperwork, but we did the work. It's how we get the IRS to talk to us." "No," I said. "It says I held authority. It says I was the manager. If I sign this, I am admitting that the appointment 18 months ago was valid. I am admitting that I knew about it." "You did know about it," my father exploded. The calm facade cracked. "We talked about it. At dinner, 2 years ago." "We never talked about it," I said, my voice cold and flat. "You asked me to sign an insurance form on an iPad. You stole my digital signature, and then you forged my wet signature on the state amendment." "Don't use that word," my mother wailed. "Forgery. It's such an ugly word. We are your parents. We have power of attorney." "You have a forged power of attorney," I corrected, "which is currently in the evidence locker at the federal building." My father leaned forward. "Listen to me, you ungrateful child. We built that company for you. We put your name on it to give you a future, and the market turned. We had cash flow problems. We used the payroll tax to keep the lights on. We were going to pay it back. We just needed time. If you hadn't gone running to the feds like a traitor, we would have fixed it by spring." "You spent $247,000 keeping the lights on?" I asked. Or did you spend it on the new boat? Or the lease on the Cadillac? My father's face turned a mottled red. If you don't sign that paper, he hissed, pointing a finger at me, you are going to prison. Do you understand? You are the treasurer. The debt is in your name. If you prove it wasn't you, they come for us. If they come for us, we go down. And if we go down, who is going to pay the debt? No one. It falls back on you. You can't escape this. That is legally incorrect, Elias interjected smoothly. If the fraud is proven, the debt is removed from Ren's record entirely. It becomes the sole liability of the perpetrators. She won't do it, my mother said, looking at me with wide, pleading eyes. She won't send us to jail. She loves us. Ren, look at me. I'm your mother. I changed your diapers. I sat up with you when you were sick. Are you really going to put me in a cell over money? It was the ultimate guilt trip, the nuclear option. I looked at the woman who had raised me. I looked at the hands that had written urgent on a fax cover sheet to frame me. I looked at the man who had called my boss to get me fired. You didn't do this for me, I said. You did this to me. I picked up the correction paper. I tore it in half. Then I tore it again. I am not signing, I said. My father stood up. His chair scraped violently against the floor. Then you are dead to us, he said. You want a war? You have one. We will testify that you authorized everything. We will produce witnesses. We will ruin you. Witnesses? I asked. Like Patricia Gable? My mother froze. Her crying stopped instantly. I slid the photo of the notary stamp across the table. I know Patricia notarized the forgery, I said. I have the certified copy from the state. I know she lied, and I know that notary fraud is a felony in this state. Did you tell Patricia she was going to prison for you, too? My mother's face went white. You wouldn't, she whispered. I already did, I said. My lawyer added her to the complaint this morning. My father looked at the photo. He looked at me. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes, real fear. He realized that I wasn't playing defense anymore. I was dismantling his infrastructure. Come on, Ellen, he said to my mother. His voice was shaking. We're leaving. If you leave, Elias said, be advised that any further contact with my client will be considered harassment and a violation of the stalking protocol we have filed with the police. Go to hell, my father spat. He grabbed my mother's arm and pulled her up. They walked to the door. My mother looked back once, her eyes filled with a terrifying mixture of hatred and heartbreak. Then they were gone. The room was silent. I slumped back in my chair. I felt exhausted, as if I had run a marathon in a suit of armor. You did good, Elias said quietly. You held the line. They are going to fight, I said. He said he would produce witnesses. He said he would ruin me. He's bluffing, Elias said. He's scared. I don't think he's bluffing, I said. My father doesn't bluff. He escalates. My phone rang. I looked at it. It wasn't a blocked number. It was a Washington, D.C. area code. I picked it up. This is Ren. Ms. Alexander, a voice said. It was Ms. Holloway from the IRS. She sounded urgent. Are you in a safe place? I am at my lawyer's office, I said. Why? We just got a flag from the system, she said. A new document was uploaded to the state portal. It hit the database 10 minutes ago. What document? I asked. I froze everything. It's not a business filing, she said. It's a property deed, a quitclaim deed. My blood went cold. What does it say? It transfers the title of your parents' house, she said, from Robert and Ellen Alexander to Ren Alexander. I stood up. What? They transferred the house to you, she said, but not as a gift. They transferred it with the existing mortgage and a second lien, a massive lien. They dumped the asset and the debt onto your name to hide it from seizure. I didn't sign that, I shouted. I am here. I didn't sign anything. I know, Ms. Holloway said. But there is a notary seal on it. It was notarized this morning by Patricia Gable. I looked at Elias. They didn't stop, I whispered. They just doubled down. They gave me the house. They gave me the debt. And they used Patricia again. Ms. Alexander. Ms. Holloway continued, her voice grim. The timestamp on the notary log says it was signed at 8:00 but the upload happened just now. They are trying to bury you in assets so we can't claim you are insolvent. They are trying to make you look like the beneficiary of their crimes. Patricia Gable, I said into the phone. She notarized it? Yes, Holloway said. But here's the thing. Wren, we pulled Patricia Gable's record. She renewed her commission last week. Do you know who paid for her bond? I gripped the phone. Who? Hollow Pine Care Solutions, she said. Your company check, signed by you. I dropped the phone on the table. They hadn't just used Patricia. They had put her on the payroll. They had made me pay for the very stamp that was sealing my coffin. Elias, I said, my voice trembling with a rage that felt like it could burn down the city. We aren't just suing them. No, Elias said, looking at the phone. We are going to have them arrested. Today. The house, I said. I own the house? According to the record, yes, Elias said. Good, I said. A dark, cold smile touched my lips. If I own the house, then I can change the locks. I grabbed my bag. Where are you going? Elias asked. I'm going home, I said. To my house, and I'm going to evict the tenants. I did not go to the house to evict them. That was the anger speaking, the raw, unfiltered adrenaline of a woman who had been pushed into a corner. Elias Thorne talked me down in the parking lot. He told me that if I used the keys, if I entered the property, if I acted like the owner, a court could construe that as acceptance of the gift. It could validate the very transfer I was trying to prove was fraudulent. So, instead of driving to the house, I drove back to the federal building. We didn't just walk in with a complaint this time. We walked in with a timeline. Elias called it the chain of malice. We sat in a conference room with Mr. Sterling and a new agent from the Treasury Inspector General regarding tax administration. The mood was different now. There was no skepticism. There was only the quiet, deadly efficiency of a government bureaucracy that realized its own systems had been weaponized. We laid it out. October 14th, the forged state filing. October 14th, the forged power of attorney faxed from the copy shop. August 12th, the digital signature theft. January 24th, the quitclaim deed transferring a debt-ridden asset to my name without my presence. Mr. Sterling looked at the quitclaim deed. He ran his finger over the notary stamp of Patricia Gable. They transferred the house to avoid the levy, Sterling said. They knew the seizure was coming for them, so they tried to move the asset to you. But because the house is underwater with liens, they weren't giving you an asset. They were giving you an anchor. It establishes the pattern, Elias said. It proves they aren't just negligent. They are actively manufacturing liability for my client to shield themselves. The machine began to turn, and when the federal government decides to investigate you, it does not happen with a bang. It happens with the clicking of keys and the quiet opening of files. The IRS fraud unit pulled the fax logs. They matched the transmission time of the power of attorney to the credit card receipt my mother used at the copy shop on Elm Street. She had paid $3.50 for the fax. That $3 charge linked her directly to the felony. Then came the state investigation. The Secretary of State's office didn't just accept my dispute. They flagged the entire entity of Hollow Pine Care Solutions. They placed a cease and desist order on the business operations until the ownership question was resolved. But the domino that toppled the whole structure was Patricia Gable. She was called in for an interview with state investigators 2 days later. I wasn't there, but Elias got the transcript. It was pathetic. She didn't have a lawyer. She thought she could explain it away as a favor between friends. When the investigator asked her if Wren Alexander was present when she stamped the quitclaim deed at 8 a.m, Patricia crumbled. I know the family, she had said on the recording. Ellen told me Wren was busy at work. She said Ren knew all about it and just couldn't make it to the office. I didn't think I was hurting anyone. I thought I was helping them save their home. You certified that a person appeared before you who was not there, the investigator replied. That is not helping. That is perjury. Patricia surrendered her notary journal. It showed a pattern of stamps for the Alexander family going back 3 years. Insurance forms, loan applications, state filings, all notarized without me, all paid for by the company account. The tax consultant, Arthur Vane, fell next. Once the IRS had the proof of the forged power of attorney, they traced the retainer payments. Vane had claimed he represented me, but the checks clearing his account were signed by Robert Alexander. The IRS asked a simple question. If Ren Alexander is the client, why has she never paid you a dime? And why did you take direction to file an installment agreement from a man who is not on the power of attorney? Vane tried to claim privilege, but privilege doesn't apply to the commission of a crime. He was forced to turn over his email logs. They showed my father directing every move, drafting the letters Vane sent, and approving the payment plans that would have enslaved me to the debt for 7 years. The evidence was overwhelming. It wasn't just a he said, she said dispute. It was a paper trail of documented, time-stamped deceit. 3 weeks later, I received the letter. It came to my apartment. The address was correct. There was no middleman. I sat on my floor, on the new doormat I had bought the day after the confrontation, and opened it. It was from the Department of the Treasury. Dear Ms. Alexander, based on our investigation and the evidence provided regarding the claim of identity theft, we have determined that you are not liable for the trust fund recovery penalty assessed against Hollow Pine Care Solutions for the tax periods ending 2023 through 2025. We have removed the designation of responsible party from your account. The assessment of $247,318 has been abated from your Social Security number. We have corrected your account to reflect that you have no association with this entity. All collection activities against you have been ceased effective immediately. Your credit file will be updated to reflect this correction. I read it 3 times. The number, 247,000, was no longer a sentence. It was just history. I didn't cry. I didn't laugh. I just felt a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying evaporate. I was light. I was untethered. But the letter had a second page. Please be advised that the liability has been reassigned to the actual responsible officers of the entity. The case has been referred to the Criminal Investigation Division for further action regarding the submission of fraudulent documents. They had moved the crosshairs back to where they belonged. My phone rang that evening. I had kept my number. I had blocked them. But I had unblocked them for 1 hour a day, on the advice of Elias, just to see if they would confess to anything else on voicemail. It was my father. I picked it up. I pressed record. Con 1, he said. His voice sounded old. It didn't have the boom, the projection, the authority. It sounded like a man who was standing in a room where the walls were closing in. I didn't win, I said. I just told the truth. We got the notice today, he said. They are auditing everything. Ren, personal, business. They froze the accounts. They put a lien on the house. The real lien, not the fake one we tried to do. I know, I said. Your mother is a wreck, he said. She can't stop crying. She says you hate us. She says she doesn't understand how her own daughter could do this to her. She did it to herself, I said. She wrote the cover sheet, Dad. She signed the checks. She asked Patricia to lie. I didn't make her do any of that. We are going to lose the house, he said. We are going to lose the business. Vane is suing us for his legal fees. Patricia is facing charges. You burned it all down. I didn't light the match, I said. I just refused to stay in the burning building. Are you happy? He asked. The question was bitter, sharp with venom. You destroyed your family over money. Are you happy now? I looked around my apartment. It was quiet. It was small, but it was mine. The rent was paid with money I earned. The lights were on because I paid the bill. There were no secrets in the drawers. There were no envelopes on the mat that I was afraid to open. "I'm not happy, Dad," I said. "And I didn't win. I just escaped." "You'll need us one day," he said. "Everyone needs family eventually, and when you do, don't call." "I won't," I said. "I have the IRS for that." I hung up. I blocked the number. This time, I blocked it forever. I spent the next week scrubbing the residue of their lives from mine. I worked with Elias to finalize the state records. The quitclaim deed was voided by the court as a fraudulent transfer. The house went back to them. Just in time for the IRS to seize it, I went to the bank and closed the accounts I had secured. I opened new ones at a different bank, one that didn't have a branch in their town. I sent one final email to the Human Resources Department at Redwood Harbor Risk Lab. Subject: Case Resolution. The federal investigation regarding the identity theft matter has been concluded in my favor. The perpetrator has been identified and is currently under enforcement action. Thank you for your support in maintaining the security of my employment. David stopped by my desk the next day. He didn't ask for details. He just put a coffee on my desk and said, "Glad you're still here. Ren." "Me too," I said. On Saturday morning, I went to the hardware store. I bought a new lock for my front door. Even though I had already changed it, I wanted a heavier one, a deadbolt that felt like a bank vault, and I bought a new welcome mat, the old one, the one where the envelope had been placed with such geometric precision. I threw in the dumpster behind the building. I laid the new mat down. It was plain, rough coir. No words, no welcome. Just a barrier between the world and my sanctuary. I stood in the hallway and looked at it. For 31 years, I had been the dependent. I had been the retirement plan. I had been the backup battery. I had been the signature they practiced and the name they used when their own credit ran dry. They had tried to write a story where I was the victim, the casualty of their greed. They thought they could edit my life, delete my agency, and publish a tragedy with my name on the cover. But they forgot one thing. I am a writer too. I write the checks. I write the emails. I write the affidavits. And most importantly, I write the ending. I stepped over the mat, unlocked my door, and walked into the quiet, beautiful silence of a life that finally, completely belonged to me. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Please let me know in the comments below so we can connect and share our thoughts. If you enjoyed this journey of justice and want to hear more, please subscribe to the Jane Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit the hype button to help this story reach more people who might need to hear it.